Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Wake Up with Ashland. My name is Eric Brooks, and I am the curator here at Ashland, the Henry Clay Estate. And I'm pleased to bring you another artifact adventure today. It's kind of a rainy day today, so it's a good day to be inside with the collection and looking at the collection. You might take the opportunity on days like today, if you're inside your own home, to look at your own collection and think about the things you have and what the stories are, and maybe record those stories. That way, future generations will have a record of that information, and we'll be able to share that information the way we share information today. Just a thought, since everybody is at home and it's kind of a nasty day to be outdoors. I want to take the opportunity to, before we get further along, to thank Dupree Mutual Funds for their support of this program. We very much appreciate that support. It's making it possible for us to bring this program to you today. Today we have a very special and very interesting artifact. It's an artifact that usually comes out at Ashland about once a year, often around Christmas time, because the event to which it is most strongly connected happened on December 24th. This artifact is one of, I think, our most important artifacts in the entire collection. Certainly one of the most unique. It is Henry Clay's Ghent jacket. It is the only garment known to exist that Henry Clay actually wore. Let me turn the camera around here and we'll take a look. So that is the Ghent jacket. Let me back up so you can see it good. There it is. You can see it is a blue coat, blue wool. You can see if you look at the cuffs and at the collar, it's got some pretty spectacular embroidery and a series of brass buttons. The buttonholes are embroidered in gilt. I see Betty Stiles Simpson from Versailles. She's one of our weekend managers and volunteers. She's also a textile person, so it makes sense that this would be one of her favorite objects in the collection. Anyway, this is a really neat piece. I'm going to get up close so you can take a look at some of the embroidery. I get over here on this side where it's a little better lit. That's wire. I'll try to keep my head out of the way here. That's wire, metal wire thread. You can see that there. Let me come down here on the cuff. It may be easier to see on the cuff. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular stuff. I mean, that took a lot of work and a lot of time to make that. If you come over here, look on the inside, you can see that it's got a silk cream lining. I'll come up here to the buttons. I believe these have been replaced. I don't think these are original. I think the original ones would have had a design of some sort and been probably fancier. Buttons often come loose, and eventually enough may have been lost that someone decided, it's just a better thing to add new buttons to our coat. So you may wonder what this coat is for. Why was this coat made? Well, it was made for Henry Clay to wear at the negotiations of the Treaty of Ghent. The Treaty of Ghent was the treaty that ended the War of 1812, which is the first war we fought as a country, a war against the British. Some called it the Second American Revolution, but the basic idea was that the British had never left us alone after the First Revolution, and so there was the desire to ensure that that happened. And so we fought a war which didn't go very well. When your capital is burned, that's not normally a sign of a successful war. But Henry Clay was one of 5 people, after having been, he was Speaker of the House at the beginning of the war, and as such was instrumental in motivating a declaration of war against Great Britain. Then he was asked to be one of 5 negotiators to end the war, and would have worn this jacket at important functions in Ghent, Belgium, to negotiate the treaty, and ultimately probably wore it at the signing of the treaty. Here is a picture of Henry Clay wearing the jacket. This is a modern painting. This is a print of a painting, the original of which hung at Clay Hall at Transylvania University. Anybody who may have gone to Transy or lived in that hall, you would recognize it. I'm sure we have a smaller version of the painting downstairs, and this is a print. You can see him wearing it with white knee breeches and a sword, gloves. The sword that you see there actually still exists as well, so it is another part of the costume, and it is currently on loan to us. I didn't bring it out today, but it is available. It is something that's still around. So you can see him. This is the full totality of the outfit that he wore. Now, if you look at Henry Clay here, you can see that he's a very tall, thin man. You pull back here to the jacket. You can see that the jacket is pretty thin. In fact, Henry Clay, at least later in his life, was 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighed 145 pounds. So that's very, very skinny. In fact, this jacket is so thin, I had to get a special form on which to display it because it won't fit on modern forms. This is not a size now existing in nature, shall we say. It doesn't have a size written in it, so I can't tell you the exact size. But you can think of it as something like, for those of you guys watching and have your suit coats, I don't know, 32 extra long or something. I mean, it's an incredibly odd size, and was rather difficult to mount as a result. But it's a spectacular piece and part of one of our most important stories, a story we tell all the time on our tour. But that's not the story I really wish to focus on today. I wish to come over here and focus on a different story. And as I do that, here in the papers, if you want to know where this coat was made, this receipt shows that on the 2nd of June, 1814, Clay bought the materials for the coat in Gothenburg, Sweden, where he first thought he would negotiate. And they're right there. You can see them, the cloth and the buttons, etc. And we think those are the materials for that coat. So anyway, that's how we know to date it. But the story I really want to tell involves this man. This man's name is John Bryan Bowman, a member of another of Kentucky's first families, and quite the educational visionary. John Bryan Bowman grew up in the Harrodsburg area and attended college there at a college called Bacon College, which he thought was a good school, but it concerned him that it was very upper class, that it was not open to everybody, that not all Kentuckians could have access to that education. So he wanted to create an institution that was much more egalitarian and focused not only on academic subjects like, say, law or religion, but also on practical subjects like business and agriculture. He eventually became president of Bacon College, renamed it Kentucky University, and eventually that school burned. And when it did, he went in search of a new location and merged with Transylvania University here in Lexington. Not long after, the state, after 1862, when the Morrill Act was passed, decided that they need to sell public lands to create a land-grant university. They decided to work with Bowman, since he already had the Kentucky University, and add an agricultural mechanical college to that. So it became the Kentucky University and Agricultural Mechanical College. And Ashland became part of the campus of that institution. It was the mechanical campus. It was also where Bowman lived and where he had the administrative offices here in the mansion at Ashland. He would have moved in here about 1866, and this was a university campus until 1878. One of the things that Bowman wanted to do as part of that was he wanted to create an institution that not only would benefit the students, but also the community. He wanted it to be a joint thing that both could take advantage of. And so he wanted things like music halls and theaters and all sorts of libraries, etc., that the community could benefit from in addition to the students attending the university. And one of the elements that he wanted to create was a fine museum to be part of that institution and be a signature museum for the city of Lexington. So he started the museum in 1867, began collecting, and within 5 years had amassed 20,000 artifacts. Now, to put that in perspective, today at Ashland, including the books and the photographs and the manuscripts and everything, we probably have between 3,000 and 4,000 artifacts in our collection. That's a huge amount of artifacts. And that's a lot of stuff. That's about 1/5 or so of what is today in the Kentucky Historical Society collection, I believe. I think theirs is a little over 100,000. So, I mean, that's a heck of a start, and a heck of a start in a very short period of time. And he had all sorts of interesting things in his museum. We're going to look at some of that here. So, he had natural history specimens. This is a bird that was actually in the collection. And you can see it's on a mount. It doesn't look too great, and that's because this picture is actually of this bird probably 10 years ago. So it would have looked a lot better in his time. You notice the label, Transylvania Museum of Natural History, and that's a label from much later on when this collection returned to Transy later on. But this bird was one of a whole lot of birds that the museum received from the Smithsonian. John Bryan Bowman actually entered into an agreement with the Smithsonian Institution to receive artifacts from collecting expeditions on which they went and to join them on those expeditions. So he was getting stuff from institutions of that magnitude. There were history artifacts. This is a Korean War helmet. This particular helmet actually came back to Lexington about 1872 with the body of a man named Lieutenant Hugh McKee. Lieutenant Hugh McKee is the first American to die on Korean soil. He was an American soldier, died in an expedition to Korea to try to open it up for trade, was killed when they attacked a fortification on a Korean river, and this helmet came back with his body and was added to the university as an object in their collection. They had a lot of other historical relics, things like a piece of Martha Washington's dress, a document from the 1765 Stamp Act, wooden models made from wood from here at Ashland, and this artifact. This actually was added to the collections of the Kentucky University and Agricultural and Mechanical College Museum of Natural History by Henry Clay's grandson, James B. Clay Jr. So it was on display as part of that museum in their historical collections. There were ethnographic materials. This is a coconut. This particular coconut came back from Central America and actually was donated by Henry Clay's son, Thomas Hart Clay, who was ambassador to both Honduras and Nicaragua during the Civil War and shortly thereafter. There were a lot of other kinds of specimens. You can see here, this is from later on, but it gives you some sense of scope of the specimens in the museum. That is at Transy in the early 20th century. I'll give you another look here. Those specimens included archaeological materials. There's another case. The Korean War helmet is in that case somewhere, I believe. But that is material also that was in the museum. And it included a zoo. There were live animals outside at Ashland in a little zoo. We know about a bear in the zoo, for example, because it got out of the zoo and went down to the other side of what was the original Ashland estate to Henry Clay's son John's farm, where one of Henry Clay's son John's formerly enslaved African Americans who was still working for him found it in with some of his horses. That didn't go over well. John was not at all enthused about having a bear with his horses, and so he came up and told Bowman to come get the bear and make sure that never happened again. It also had what were called curiosities. This was a cabinet of curiosities, basically things collected to demonstrate the world and all that is in it and allow people to see things they wouldn't otherwise get to see. Those curiosities included things like a two-headed lamb or a four-footed duck or a number of other odd artifacts of nature. One of the oddest was a mammoth hairball, and this hairball weighs about 20-25 pounds and is a little larger than a basketball. It came from the stomach of a bison, I believe, a bison or a cow. It was given by Mary Todd Lincoln's brother, and if you're interested in it, it has its own Twitter handle. Look up mammoth hairball on Twitter, you can follow it. And it periodically posts about life in the museum. This museum was very, very advanced. It kept very, very good records. You can see here, this is a photocopy from the ledger for the museum of the historical records of the Museum of Natural History at Kentucky University. And if I open that, you can see here they made note of everything that came in and where it came from and what it was. Relics and natural items from Ashland. These are things collected here. Go on back here. I mean, you can see there's a person's name with artifacts that they collected. So, quite an interesting document. There's a lot of great information in here that if you want to know about the museum, you can read. And Bowman donated some artifacts. Here's one that Bowman donated right there. So that's a hen's egg, an oddly shaped hen's egg. So again, cabinets of curiosities. If you look through here, you can find Henry Clay's grandsons. Some attended the university and donated material to it. A lot of fascinating records there. This document and all the documents for the museum are stored at Transylvania University and can be accessed in their special collections department. Shout out to B.J. Gooch. She's the special collections librarian there. She's helped me a lot with my research on this. I was actually introduced to this topic by a former staff member and good friend named Wendy Bright. She does a really great blog called History of a House Museum, which is about the evolution of Ashland from private house to public museum. If you are interested in that, well worth taking a look. But I owe a great debt to Wendy for introducing me to this. You can see here they had a list of contractors who would build mounts and do other things, create artificial eyes for taxidermy, taxidermists. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, that's like your Rolodex. I have indexes like that today of people that I work with, and I have records like this. And if you want to see some of our records, go online to henryclay.org, to the Learn tab, and go down to where it says the online collection. You can see our entire collection online and look at some of our records. So it was quite a fascinating institution, and it had a really great start and built a really interesting and important collection. And Bowman had great vision for it. Unfortunately, Bowman and the university started having financial trouble about 1873 or 4, and the cracks began to form in the institution. It was a joint venture. The state ran the A&M portion. KU was run by the Disciples of Christ, who had always run Transy and entered into it when they became KU. And they just had different goals and objectives. And so by 1878, the institution split. And the A&M portion went over to its current location. We now know it as the University of Kentucky. Go Cats. And KU returned to its original location and remained under that name until 1913, when it reverted to its original name, Transylvania University. Of course, it's still there. What remains of this collection that was collected in the museum, with the exception of the Ghent jacket, which is here, is at Transy today. They have a little museum called the Musnik Museum, which is in their science building, run by a man named Jamie Day, who's a professor of physics. Jamie's another good friend and a member of our advisory board and our collections committee here at Ashland. I work with Jamie a lot. Jamie is the steward of the remaining taxidermied specimens and other artifacts, including the mammoth hairball, over at Transy. So if you ever want to see it, the Musnik Museum is opened occasionally and can be opened on request if you contact Jamie. So that's where the material is today. Now, I want to show you a picture that comes from the very end of this story. The last time the Ghent jacket was worn. If you wonder what gives curators nightmares, here you go. This is April 12th, 1850, the opening of the Ashland Museum. And that is a descendant. His name is William Cassius Goodloe McDowell. That is his niece, Mary Stuckey. They dressed as Henry Clay and Lucretia Clay, and he is wearing the Ghent jacket. Not a good idea. Unfortunately, that did cause some damage, which has since been repaired. We've had it conserved several times, but that's the last time the jacket was worn. You can see there at the opening of the estate. So Cameron asked about the museum being located in the mansion, and it was. Probably downstairs, probably at the back of the mansion today, what is today our billiard room, that end of the mansion. It got to be that there were so many artifacts they couldn't display them, so they were just boxes stored away wherever they could find a place here at the estate. So the museum was actually right here at Ashland. So that's really a fascinating thing to think about museums being here. One of the things that I find saddest about this is that if you think about the start this museum had and what Bowman tried to do, I think it could have been a really, really important museum. There's a museum in Louisville called the Kentucky Science Center, which is a great science center. If you ever go to Louisville, it's well worth a visit. It started very similarly at exactly the same time, a very small collection of curiosities centered on an Egyptian mummy that had been brought over and displayed at the Louisville Free Public Library. They kept it there for a while. Eventually it grew and they moved it into its own facility, and it grew from there to become a very large museum. And it's a very, very fine museum. I think this, had the university not had its troubles, might have become such an institution for Lexington. And I think it's very sad in many ways that Lexington didn't get that opportunity. Sue asks about the photograph here, that if you look at Mary Stuckey, the woman in the dress here, what she's wearing, she asks about what she's wearing around her shoulders. And I can't be absolutely sure, but I think that is a lace runner made for Henry Clay and Lucretia by a group of Irish ladies. I may talk about that in a future artifact adventure, so I won't go deeply into it, but it is something they owned. Again, it was a different time, a different view of artifacts. We would never do anything like that today, but that was seen as being a neat thing to do for the opening. So Anyway, that was the last time the coat was worn. Thank you for tuning in. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, we'll remind you to tune in again next Tuesday when Cameron will be back with another exciting artifact adventure. The date of the photo is April 12th, 1850. It was when we opened. That was when that coat was worn for the grand opening of Ashland as a museum. So April 12th, 1850. So just a little over 80 years ago. 70 years ago. Sorry, math is not my strong suit. That's why I went into museums. 70 years ago, we just passed the 70th anniversary of the opening of Ashland as a museum. And that's when that photograph was taken. I think that's like a Herald Leader newspaper type photo that we have in our archival collection. Well, if there are no further questions, thank you again for tuning in. We very much appreciate it. Everyone have a good day, and we'll see you next week.